Good evening. The March 10th, 2025 regular meeting of the Board of Directors of the Kent Consolidated School District will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mr. Tracy, may we please have the roll?
Mr. Bowden?
Here.
Mrs. Creel?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Finnegan?
Present.
Dr. Garrett?
Here.
Mrs. Golden-Miarki?
Present.
Mr. Cronenberg?
Here.
Dr. McVeigh?
Here.
And Ms. Myers? Good timing. All present.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the regular meeting minutes for the board meeting held February 10th, 2025. The recommended action is that the board accept and approve the minutes of that meeting. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bowden, thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Finnegan, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Next up is the approval of the minutes of the Policy Committee meeting held February 24th, 2025. The recommended action is the board accept and approve the minutes of the Policy Committee meeting held that day. May I please have the motion?
Move to accept and approve. Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. A second?
Second, Myers.
Myers, thank you. Any discussion? In favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting held that day.
Mr. President, you're not on the mic.
My mic is on now. Thank you, Mr. Kramer. We're approving the minutes of the Curriculum Committee meeting for the meeting held February 24th, 2025. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Dr. Garrett, thank you. A second?
Second.
Mr. Bowden, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We move to the minutes of the Communications Committee held on March 3rd, 2025. The recommended motion is that the board accept and approve the minutes of the Communications Committee meeting held on that date. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Bowden, thank you. A second?
Second.
Ms. Golden-Miarki, thank you. Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to amend the Communications Committee meeting report to show that Mrs. Carrillo was present.
Thank you. We have a motion for an amendment. May I have a second on that?
Second.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Any discussion on the motion to amend? All in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. The motion to amend is carried. We move now, is there any further discussion? We move now to a vote on the motion to accept and approve the minutes of the Communications Committee meeting held on March 3rd, 2025 as amended. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye, Myers.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. The motion is carried. Last up on our minutes tonight is the Finance Committee meeting minutes for the meeting held March 3rd, 2025. The recommended motion is that the board accept and approve the minutes of the Finance Committee meeting held on that date. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Second?
Second.
Dr. Garrett, any discussion? On the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye, Myers.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We move now to public comment for agenda items, for which there is none tonight, and we move into reports and student business. Catch me if I get any of this wrong, because I'm going by some notes here that are in the agenda, but I believe we have no student council report tonight, so we're going to move directly into a student trip for robotics. And we have Mr. Garcia, Mr. Lentz, Mr. Vance, and students. Is that correct?
Mr. Garcia and Mr. Lentz are here.
Let's do it.
Hello, we're on behalf of the robotics team. We're just here to just ask for permission for an overnight trip for our district championship if we qualify, and our worlds also if we qualify.
Thank you very much. Let me put the motion on the floor, and then we'll see if we have any questions for you. There are two student trips, one for the Mid-Atlantic District Championship, April 3rd through the 5th. The second is the World Championships, April 15th through the 20th. That one's down in Houston. The district is in Bethlehem, PA. Is that correct?
Yep.
Got it. The recommended motion is that those following student trips be approved in accordance with Board Policy 121, field trips. May I please have the motion?
So moved. Finnegan.
Mr. Finnegan, a second.
Second.
Ms. Golden Miarki, thank you very much. Any discussion or questions?
No discussion, but just I hope, as in every year, that the second trip is needed.
We do as well. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
On the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Good luck. We wish you well, and thanks for representing Kennett to the district and to the world.
All right, thank you very much. We truly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a student trip for the choir, and I'm wondering if somebody is here. They're not here? You gonna take it? Okay. I'll go ahead with the intro, Dr. D. There's a student trip for the choir going to East Hartford, Connecticut for the National Association of, hang on. National Association for Music Education. And we've got a couple students going to that one. That is in Hartford, Connecticut, and that is going to be April 23rd, 27. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, we're just really proud of Ryan and Pierce on their accomplishments. They can really sing.
I second that. They can really sing, and I will say, in advance of even putting the motion on the floor, but the choir has been doing a lot of great stuff, both this year and prior years. So congratulations to the entire choir and to Mr. Batten. The recommended action is that the following student trip be approved in accordance with Board Policy 121, field trips. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Second.
Second.
Ms. Golden Miarki. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. The field trip is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And are you up for the
I'll stay here for the
FBLA
next
as
one.
well?
Yes.
Well, I'll let you take it from the beginning for FBLA.
All right, our future business leaders annual conference is coming up, and we plan to have a student trip leave KHS to go to Hershey on Sunday, April 6th at 6 p.m., returning on Wednesday, April 9th at 2 p.m. We'll be staying at the Hershey Lodge during the conference. There are approximately 10 students who qualified to attend, along with one chaperone, Mr. Fritsch.
Thank you very much. The recommended motion is that the student trip be approved in accordance with Board Policy 121, field trips. May I please have the motion?
So moved. Kramer?
Mr. Kramer? Second?
Second.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Any discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Derek is going to Hershey again. Thank you very much, Dr. D. We move now to agenda item 3.5. Dr. Rizzo Saunders, your update.
Okay, so we have lots of great things to celebrate, and it's always really important for everybody to see the investment that you make decisions about and how that comes out and the return on that investment. We had over 800 K-5 students and families be at Kennett Middle School on Thursday, and they were there for STEM night. This is the third annual event, and it's made possible by many local organizations as well as our teachers and the Teaching and Learning Department. And congratulations to Jen Miller and Rebecca Vaitre, as well as the Teaching and Learning Department and the STEM teachers, Jen Bronstein and Bailey and Danny Hesfer. It takes months to plan this. They did an outstanding job. We also raised almost $27,000 at Minithon. Proceeds will go toward the needs of pediatric cancer patients and their families, and they really did enjoy that, the students. Model UN, in case you didn't know, Mr. Michael Waite and 3 others took some of our students to. Apple doesn't like that. So they took 21 students to the Model UN. That is an invitational, and that is in Washington, D.C. It was the 62nd annual one, and aptly named Diplomacy Through Education. Our Model UN is an academic club, and it competes against other local and regional schools, and they debate real-world issues. Moving on, we also have an incredible kindergarten registration effort this year. April Reynolds, Lisa Palmerini, Sandra Ramos, and Veronica Gamboa. They have had just an incredible effort. They have fantastic pamphlets. They went out to every single preschool, and they brought with them a big Kennet cookie. It was about this big, and the kids loved it. Kids went home with a sticker in English and Spanish on their clothes on how to register for kindergarten, and they went to over 24 preschools, and those are starting to come in now.
Dr. Rosasando, sorry for the interruption. I heard about those cookies in my community. Boy, people like that.
They were good. And you know who made the cookies? Even better than that, our students at TCHS. So, yeah, so lots of great things to celebrate. We are congratulating Sarah Godey, who got the Delaware Valley Excellence in Teaching Awards, and she will receive $1,000 for her classroom and an additional $1,000 for Greenwood. So she was nominated by one of her classroom parents to receive this award. So congratulations to Sarah. It was a week of celebrating reading, including at Mary D. Lang, where students and teachers enjoyed themed spirit days, and many of them dressing up as their favorite storybook character. Teachers joined in the fun and incorporated engaging reading activities. It was a fantastic week to celebrate our students' ability to read. And Bancroft students celebrated love and kindness in February, along with the 100th day of school. I cannot believe we're at 100 days already. So they practiced creative writing, they practiced kindness, and they wrote positive affirmations to each other as ways to show examples of how to show kindness. And they also used their imagination to write about what it would be like to be 100. And if you went into the 5th grade at Bancroft, they used one of the aging apps. It's a little scary though, because I tried to use it and it didn't look different. And that was a little scary. So I have outgrown the app apparently. And we are congratulating the 6th floor at the middle school. They have had significant long-term commitment to the Kennett Consolidated School District with a total of 120 years of teaching experience across the 4 of them for teaching at the Kennett Consolidated School District. Bailey Fee and Katie King presented at the 2025 Pennsylvania Association of Middle-Level Educators in Pittsburgh last month, and they just did a fantastic job and came back really having engaged in talking about social emotional learning in the classroom. So, and of course, we have wonderful news. Thrilled to tell you about our students who will be competing in swimming and diving at Bucknell. We have Alex at indoor track. We will have, this actually already took place. Adrian took second place in the 600 and third in the 200. Sarah, Elisa, Xavier took the third high jump, and Sage and Aiden were able to also participate. So congratulations to all of those. Also, congratulations to Blake and Bryce and Zach and Kane. They all placed in the wrestling meet this weekend. So congratulations to our state qualifiers. Just a little update, and I'm not going to go into this with too much detail on our cell phone and personal device advisory group. We are very grateful to Mr. McGuire and Dr. Barber for being willing to take this on, and they are engaging in a really collaborative process as they work through how they believe we should best come up with ideas and ways in which to manage students' phones and individual devices. So they have drafted a belief statement, and they also have done a stakeholder feedback with a survey, and they also surveyed our secondary students. They are in the process of drafting guidelines and next steps, and you'll be hearing more about that at our next board meeting. So in April, they hope to be bringing those to the school board. Finally, we continue our work on the strategic plan. We are really kind of getting to the point where we will be starting our work on our priorities. This upcoming meeting will be concentrating on developing significant ways in which we will measure our priorities if we solve the problems that we are designing. So, not because we're designing problems from our priorities. So, also the high school update, we presented to the curriculum committee at the last curriculum committee meeting. Using research, the high school put together a new hybrid module schedule that will include both days that have skinnies and days, I call them skinnies, so more traditional periods, and days that will have block periods. And I have included for you what those will look like. So Monday, Tuesdays, and Fridays will be all period-based days, and Wednesdays and Thursdays will be block days. They think that this will help for student absenteeism. It also will provide ample time for meaningful labs and longer projects. So that is the superintendent report for this month. I am happy to answer questions if you have any.
Let me jump in for just a moment and tag on to the kindergarten registration effort and mention that May 1st from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. here in this very room is the kindergarten meet the teachers, greet the students for the new kindergartners for next fall. And as my sales pitch for that is, to my knowledge, the only event in the Kennett Consolidated School District where you can meet every school's mascot at once.
Ooh, and just for the record, we may be unveiling another mascot soon? By May 1st?
What's that? 6 to 7. 6 to 7 right here, May 1st. Thank you. Any questions or discussion for Dr. Rizzo-Saunders?
Thank you so much.
Your report was a hit. No questions. We move now to the facilities report, and we have here Mr. Bryce. Mr. Bryce, you are up.
Dr. Rizzo-Saunders, President Cronenberg, members of the board, staff and community members, good evening. The facilities report for March the 10th is as follows. Kennett High School projects. We have a couple projects for this spring break. One of them is in the TV studio. our central maintenance team is preparing for upcoming work in the studio. We will be converting the current lighting system to energy-efficient LED lights. This process will involve removing the old hi-hat lights, replacing twist-locked outlets with standard outlets, and rerouting the power supply to the electrical panel. Once this work is completed, an outside contractor will install the new LED lighting. In the high school auditorium, we are preparing for the installation of a new projector in the auditorium. This will require mounting the projector on the outside of the sound booth in the balcony. To accommodate this, central maintenance will install, which they did today, an outlet on the outside wall to power the projector. An outside contractor will then complete the installation of the projector. Greenwood construction update. The site work, the excavation and installation of underground sanitary lines in Area A, which is the public area with the main office and the media center, has been completed. Excavation for electrical and data conduit is continuing in that Area A and B. Area B is the cafeteria, kitchen, along with the main office in Area A. Construction of the CMU walls, which is concrete masonry units at the stage in Area B, has been finalized. Foundation and masonry work is ongoing in areas D and E, which are classroom areas. CMU walls on the west side of Area D and E are being constructed, which are also classroom areas, as well as the east walls of areas B and C. Electrical and plumbing contractors have started installing underground feeds in areas A and B, which are the public areas, while the plumbing contractor continues installing sewer lines in Area B. The Greenwood construction project is on schedule. The New Garden Elementary construction. Roofing deck in Area A, the public space, has been completed. Additionally, the south side stairs have been installed in classroom areas C and D. The installation of electrical conduit and wiring continues in both areas C and D, which are classroom wings. Work on window frames, windows, and roofing systems is also progressing in these same areas. The layout of walls in areas B, C, and D is being finalized for the masons, with CMU installation and continuing once the layouts are set. This project is also on schedule. The Central Grounds Department has begun preparation for spring sports, including field maintenance and setup. The high school maintenance staff has also installed poles and netting around the track for lacrosse use. Due to recent high winds, several trees were downed. We are currently working with ProTree to clean up the fallen trees and identify additional trees in need of pruning or removal. And finally, we have a maintenance staff member, Tom DePet, who was with us for the last 10 years. He will be retiring here in a couple weeks at the end of the month. We extend our best wishes to Tom in his retirement and thank him for his years of service. And this concludes the facilities report for March the 10th.
Mr. Bryce, thank you. And the board also extends our appreciation and thanks to Mr. DePep for his years of service. Any questions or comments for Mr. Bryce?
Thank you for this report. I do think this format is very clear, and it is, you do get a whole lot of questions on what might be happening, so it's nice to have exactly this report. So thanks for all of the work that you and your team do, and thank you for this format and for being here.
And regarding the school construction, Mr. Tracy confirmed for me, but the flyovers are available on the website?
They are posted on the website. You have to go under the Department of Facilities and then look for Building for the Future. Then you'll not only see the drone flyovers, but monthly updates that Lisa Palmerini is posting on a regular basis.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, so people can follow the progress of the new schools, and obviously we're very excited to have those. The calendar does still roll, and even though those schools are, many number of months away, they're coming, and it's very exciting that we'll have 2 new schools in addition to 4 others as we continue at KCSD. Next up on the agenda is the financial reports. Mr. Tracy.
Thank you, President Cronenberg. Before we get into the monthly financial reports, speaking of the building program, the district has closed on the final component, the fourth of the borrowings for the elementary school program. We settled on 34.8, but they were sold as premium bonds for us, netting 37.9 million in proceeds. We'll actually go to full settlement on, I believe it's April 4th. So Dr. Brady will have a bank account. We already have that established, but we're tracking out all the bonds related to the financing of our elementary. This bond issue was a 20-year deal at about a 3.38 overall average yield. So actually it was very favorable. And those of you who have followed our preliminary budget, we were able to reduce about $500,000 that we had scheduled for our debt, which is our annual obligation to pay off those bonds. So that's already been reduced based upon the forecast for this particular bond issue. Moving on to our financial reports, it is attached to board docs on page 1. We have the revenue summary report for the period ending February 28th. At the tail end of the revenue summary report, you can find our list of assets and investments of $49,631,461.48, and Schedule A, which lists all those fixed investments. On page 4, we have our expenditure summary report, which details our expenses in our budgetary format. On page 9, we have our food service profit and loss report. We had a monthly net income of $29,785 for a year-to-date total of $244,000 plus change. Please note that we have not been billed for, or we have not received February's National School Lunch subsidies, nor received January and February's Chartwell's invoices. On page 10, we have a very detailed capital projects fund report. This report details our current bond proceeds and expenses to date associated with the construction of both New Garden and Greenwood Elementary School. I think then we are at page 13, which is our enrollment report for the month of February, which illustrates that we're down an additional 8 students from the prior month, leading us to 3,788 students. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Any questions or comments?
Just the comment is that it's nice to hear the bond is a 20-year bond. When we were first talking about these buildings, we were looking at 30s, 24s, but to come in with a 20-year bond is a great savings in interest as well.
A couple of the first bonds actually go beyond the 20 years, but there's a significant drop-off at 20 years, dropping from about $8 million down to about $4 million at the time we pay off this final phase.
And I would echo that. Very heartening to see that bond issue go that way.
We move on to our committee and other reports. Dr. Garrett, you're first up for the TCHS and CCIU report.
Great, thank you. The Chester County Intermediate Unit Board of Directors held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, February 19th at the Brandywine campus on Boot Road. Just a few highlights. Mr. Joe Labitsky, Director of Administrative Services, reviewed in first reading the draft of the 2025-26 categorical, core, and occupational education budgets and answered questions. Key points in the presentation were as follows. No increase in proposed core budget contributions by districts. Proposed 4% increase in occupational education tuition rate. The goal for their marketplace program prices for Chester County school districts is to limit to the Act 1 index of 4%, and categorical budgets do not require local funds. Presentation was made by Ms. Danielle Hawkins, Assistant Director of Human Resources, who provided an overview of the CCIU Comprehensive Plan for 2025 through 2028, which outlined the organizational strategic goals and priorities to support student success and continuous improvement in teaching and learning. This is required every 3 years by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and the plan aligns with the CCIU's mission and vision, addressing strengths and challenges identified through the data review. Federally funded program presentation was led by Sam Ewing and Tamara Acuna, and provided an overview of key programs supported by federal funding totaling over $60 million. It highlighted major initiatives such as migrant education, Head Start and Early Start, 21st Century Community Learning, and the education leading to employment and career training programs. Lastly, a personnel action that I think is important to share. The board approved the appointment of Dr. Jennifer Murray as the new Assistant Executive Director, replacing Dr. Steve Gerhardt, who is retiring on June 30, 2025. Dr. Murray is set to begin her role on June 16, 2025. She's a highly respected educational leader in Pennsylvania and has earned many achievements and recognitions throughout the years, and we all look forward to having her as part of the Team CCIU. The next CCIU Board of Directors meeting will be held next Wednesday, March 19th at 7:30 at the Pickering campus in Phoenixville.
Thank you, Dr. Good.
You're
Any
welcome.
questions, comments? There is no report tonight from the Chester County School Authority. We move to the Legislative Council. Mr. Kramer.
Thank you. The notes and slides from the January meeting are available attached to this meeting's agenda. February meeting notes, there's a slide deck and some notes. Both of those are worth checking through. The February meeting notes have not been distributed yet, but they'll be attached to next month. So I would recommend, it is worth a click through. Overwhelmingly, right, the impression from these meetings is that there's a great deal of activity that affects us that is first proposed. Most of it does not go through, but it really does. It's a very active, group of people in Harrisburg who make a lot of decisions that affect us a great deal. So it's worth being familiar with those. We met in person on the 26th. Chris DeFazio ran through a lot of those education-related bills, ranging from a renewed cursive writing requirement to an honesty in teaching proposal that would combat what is termed honesty in teaching, which is against disinformation, I suppose. Two of those have found their way out of the House Education Committee. Eating disorder awareness, which probably does not have it's a mandate to do something about that, and a measure that would allow intermediate units like the CCIU to own buildings, which would negate the need for that Chester County School Authority to one degree or another, as that's one of its main functions, is to hold the capital. Governor Shapiro's budget address included increased education funding, basic and special education. Basic and special education increases total about $115 million spread over 500 districts. So that's not the biggest increase ever, but there is an increase. There will be more to discuss there as time goes on. As we know, the budget process is fraught and long, and there's a lot to that, and you're not sure what will come out the other end. Of note, the next likely step in cyber charter reform, there was an Auditor General's report that came out on cyber charters that showed that over the last several years, they more or less have doubled their revenue. So there's a proposal that would save all of the school districts that are paying cyber charter tuition a fair amount of money. And it will probably be a standard tuition rate. The one that's proposed is $8,000. That seems unlikely to hold. Probably even more important is the rate that would be for special education students in cyber charter schools. And there is a current reimbursement that we get that was sort of intended to offset those payments as the cyber charter numbers went way up. That will be phased out. I think we only get something like $100,000, something just over $100,000. But, so something will be going on there. I would note, we weighed in some months ago, we weighed in on the issue of funding non-private schools, and that has not been brought up again this year. So there is our effort, among others, has probably borne some fruit there. That was a very hot topic last year and is not this time around. So that's a good thing, I think. Certainly based on our opinion as we voted on unanimously. The council's legislative breakfast will be held in May this year, and you will all get invitations. It is worth going to that. It's at TCHS, and it's an opportunity to meet legislators, and it's worth doing. And then there was a roundtable discussion. These meetings end in a roundtable, and it was around immigration enforcement. There is a general consensus across the county boards that disruption of the educational environment is not okay, and that districts should limit interactions to those mandated by judicial warrants. And that should be the sum total of our interaction with that with that set of issues and with the federal agents who enforce those. And to noteworthily, none of those judicial warrants have been issued to the knowledge of the folks in the room up to this point. So that's my report, and I thank you.
Mr. Kramer, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I will say that the Chester County School Board Legislative Council, it consists of one school board member from each district in Chester County, and they meet on a monthly basis. And they do a great job of monitoring what happens in Harrisburg and feeding that back to the local districts. Much of what we do at this table is focused within our borders, and it's good to have knowledge, and it's good to remember that much of what impacts us happens outside our borders. So, Mr. Kramer, thank you for your report, and thank you for serving on that council.
Thanks, President.
I move next to the Curriculum Committee report. Dr. Garrett.
Thank you again, President Cronenberg. The Curriculum Committee met on February 24th, and along with my chairing was my co-chair, Dr. Rizzo Saunders, and committee members, Ms. Lynn Golden-Miarki and Dr. Jeff McVeigh. In addition, I had board members who were there, Dave Cronenberg, Ethan Kramer, and LaToya Myers. Since Dr. Rizzo Saunders covered most of what was happening with the high school schedule, I am not going to repeat that, but I want to take this opportunity to really thank Dr. DeAngelis and his team who were there to help present and to answer questions. That included Chanel August, Dwayne Kotz, Jeff Thomas, DJ Augustine, these are our instructors, Scott Bosch, Christine Wilson, and Peggy Hughes. So our thanks to all of the administrators and teachers who came in on a Monday evening to help present and answer questions. The last item that was on the agenda for the curriculum meeting was a pilot process, and Dr. Rizzo Saunders reviewed that. And this is a district's curriculum pilot process, and she talked about the communications that was sent to staff, a staff survey that was distributed, and she highlighted the key survey findings, which included the extensive time required to complete the process, the curriculum pilot process, the relevance of the process for elective and cycle courses, the bridging process for students, the number of individuals involved, concerns regarding previous material selections, and the time commitment required for those participating, and the time commitment is going to be rather extensive. There was no further business, and we adjourned at 7:57 p.m., and our next meeting will be held on March 31st, which is the last Monday in March. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Garrett. Any questions or comments? We move to the Finance Committee. Mr. Finnegan.
Thank you, President Cronenberg. Finance Committee met on Monday, March the 3rd. We had two agenda items, the second of which was a very detailed report of the 5-year technology plan from Mr. McGuire, and no summary would do that justice, so I suggest that everyone just go to the presentations attached to board docs for that Finance Committee meeting and read through all the great work that he's been doing. The first thing we did, though, was we reviewed the revised 2025-26 state subsidies based on Governor Shapiro's proposed Pennsylvania state budget. And the effective subsidies included the basic education subsidy, special ed subsidy, and Ready to Learn block grant. The preliminary budget, our preliminary budget, had estimated a 2% increase in the basic education subsidy, like a hold harmless. However, the governor's proposal includes only a 0.98% increase. As a result, our proposed final budget will need to be adjusted by minus $113,033. There was a slight increase in special ed subsidy of 2.6%, or $57,419. But a single employee with benefits is closer to $120,000, so it's not even covering one of the special ed positions that we added last year or new ones that we're requested for next year. The Ready to Learn block grant will have a negligible increase. Overall, we anticipate $96,554 less from the state than our preliminary budget stated. Our Act 1 index is set at 4%. Our preliminary budget called for a 2.81% increase. However, the preliminary budget did not include two significant tax assessment appeals for the Borough Genesis buildings, which could result in a decrease of $340,000, nor did it include the potential loss of earned income tax if such tax is enacted by East Marlboro Township, All signs lead to them enacting that tax will reduce our income a further $500,000. So taking all the adjustments of revenue deficits into account, our preliminary tax increase would need to be increased to 3.52%, assuming no additional hiring. Raising it to 3.95% or just under the index, we could potentially add 2 additional new special ed employees, which are recommended by a CCIU audit. I need to stress again that our 2 elementary schools are fully funded and will not require any tax increase to support those projects. And we have until June the 9th to pass a final budget. But for the first time, at least in my tenure, I don't see how we can reduce our preliminary proposed increase, and instead we'll need to come in higher, yet still under the Act 1 index. So we said at the beginning of this season, buckle your seatbelts, it's going to be a tough year. And the next Finance Committee meeting is Monday, April the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Any questions or comments from Mr. Finnegan? Thank you, good report. Don't like the results, but the details, well stated. Next up is the Policy Committee, Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, President Cronenberg. The Policy Committee met on February 24th, most of the items that were discussed will show up subsequently here, and we'll have a brief discussion of those as they come up. We did have a somewhat extensive discussion around the potential changes to our committee structure led by President Cronenberg, and we'll meet further on those. We've had some communication since, and also some communication with our solicitors, so there'll be some discussion about how to do that. The intent here is to, sort of clean up and ensure that we're making the life of a school board member livable, but also that we're getting all the business done that needs to get done. So stay tuned for that, and there'll be some further discussion. I think I can leave it at that, as the rest of these are going to come up as we move forward in the meeting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Any questions or comments? Our last committee report is from Mr. Bowden, the Communications Committee.
The Communications Committee met here on March 3rd with myself and Mrs. Golden-Miyarki and Carrillo and other committee members, other board members attending. Our communications director, Lisa Palmerini, gave us an update of the various projects underway in her department. First, we will be getting the results of the CCIU's communications audit at our April committee meeting. Focus group participation has been strong, but she noted that response to some of the surveys were disappointing, and we briefly discussed survey fatigue and ways that we might combat it. Our new website continues to phase in and is expected to display original content from all of our schools within the month. This effort is being led by the principals at each school and includes news stories, photos, and videos. We will be looking for ways to incentivize students to create content about their schools, and we'll be sharing it on social media and with the press. We will be offering this both in Spanish and English and a few other languages, and the IT department is working on providing captioning for videos for our multilingual community. Lisa reviewed some of the nifty efforts underway to spread the news about kindergarten registration, which Superintendent Rizzo Saunders reviewed, including the cookies and the flyers and the stickers. And lastly, we reviewed our efforts to keep our community informed about recent immigration law enforcement actions, which have so far not touched our schools.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. And if I may, referring back to the initial part of your report, it's not the survey responses themselves that were disappointing, it was the count of survey responses. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment. I mean, we say that Lisa's department is doing a great job, which it is, and it's important to point out that Lisa's department is Lisa.
Noted.
Thank you. We move next to, we're done with committee reports and reports on student business. We move to routine business. Ms. Marsala is up for the personnel report.
Good evening, President Cronenberg, Dr. Rizzo-Saunders, and members of the board. This evening, I'd like to present this personnel report for March 10th, 2025. I know that Mr. Bryce highlighted it earlier, but I had also planned to thank Tom DePep for his years of service as he gets ready to enjoy his retirement for us. And the nice thing tonight is that it's a rather short report. We always like that.
Thank you, Ms. Marsala. The recommended action is that the board approve the following personnel changes as presented. All personnel hires are contingent upon securing required certification. May I please have the motion?
Move to approve. Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. A second?
Second, Myers.
Ms. Myers, thank you. Any discussion? The board has heard a lot from Mr. Daniel J. Augustine during its time and during his relatively short time with KCSD. He is moving on to take a position with the Chester County Intermediate Unit, and we wish him well. And I think Chester, isn't it?
CCIU.
Yeah, Chester County Intermediate Unit. We wish him well. Obviously, he sees this as a step forward in his professional career, but we will miss him, as well as Mr. DePep. On the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Bill lists, Mr. Tracy.
Thank you, President Cronenberg. This evening, we have the usual and customary treasurer's report beginning on page 2. It is fully attached to board docs. We have the general operating bill list for the period of February 11th through this evening in the amount of $5,457,721.24. We have a couple large payments. One is the quarterly bill to the CCIU for their services, and the second one is over a $2 million bond payment. We also have $1.9 million in payroll disbursements. As a reminder, our PNC procurement card activity is at the tail end of the section on pages 15 and 16. On page 17, we have the athletic fund bill list for the month of February, which represents payments for officiating our male and female sports in the amount of $3,567. On page 20, we have the internal service fund for our self-insured healthcare products in the amount of $366,461.60. On page 22, we have the capital reserve bill list. It's relatively small this month, $2,995.30, which represents payments to various facility and as outlined in our district's 5-year capital improvement plan. On page 24, we have our capital projects fund bill list in the amount of $2,582,430.85, which represents payments associated with the new elementary school's building project. And finally, for this evening, on page 27, we have the food service bill list in the amount of $23,680.33.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. The recommended motion is that the board approve the bill list. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. A second?
Second.
Dr. Garrett, thank you. Any questions or comments for Mr. Tracy? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We move to new business, and the chair recognizes Ms. Marsala, who is going to present 4 policies in sequence. Ms. Marsala, the floor is yours.
Good evening again. And the first policy that I would like to bring to the board this evening is Policy 218, Student Discipline. This policy was formerly known as the Code of Conduct of Student Conduct, and it is being revised to be aligned with our current Code of Student Conduct, and thus also the updated name to Student Discipline.
Thank you, Ms. Marsala. The recommended motion is that the board approve the above section of board policy and adopt it as policy, rescinding and declaring void all previous policies or portions thereof to the extent that they are inconsistent with this policy. May I please have the motion?
So moved. Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, second.
Second, Myers.
Ms. Myers, thank you. Discussion.
As discussed, so this dovetails with work that we've done pretty extensively on a code of conduct, a student code of conduct, but that includes the rights and responsibilities of everyone, including staff and the board. I'm very proud of that work, and this policy more or less makes reference to that. So that's an important thing to note, that this is the gateway from the past policy, from policies that we are now passing with any luck, to directly to that much more significant document in my mind, which really does lay out the kind of the ethics and morals of a community. And I'll remind everyone that says that we are to be a just community.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Other questions and comments?
Just want to note, we had a conversation during policy committee regarding a requirement to the Pennsylvania Department of Education regarding reporting all new incidents. And so one suggestion I had made was for the superintendent, when that report is sent to them, that the board also gets the all incidents report.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Good point. Any other questions or comments? On the motion for policy 218, student discipline, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Next up is policy 218.2, terroristic threats. Ms. Marsala.
Yes, and this is a new policy for Kennett School District, and this is a one that we had used the PSBA model language for this policy, and would like to present it to you this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Marsala. The recommended action is that the board approve the above section of board policy and adopt it as policy, rescinding and declaring void all previous policies or portions thereof to the extent that they are inconsistent with this policy. May I have the motion?
So moved, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. A second?
Second, Myers.
Ms. Myers, thank you very much. Any discussion?
It's a significant policy. I think it's very straightforward in a certain sense, but I'm appreciative that we are getting these ducks in a row.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Anything else? For the benefit of those online or unable to view them right now, I would note that these updated policies and new policies are all attached to the agenda on board docs if you wish to go in and view these policies. On the motion for policy 218.2, terroristic threats, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Our third policy tonight is policy 218.3, discipline of students convicted or adjudicated of sexual assault. Ms. Marsala.
Yes, and this policy is a revision to a current policy. It updates with the current new verbiage and language that comes from the PSBA template that was given to us.
Thank you, Ms. Marsala. The recommended motion is that the board approve the above section of board policy and adopt it as policy, rescinding and declaring void all previous policies or portions thereof to the extent that they are inconsistent with this policy. May I please have the motion?
So moved, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, is that second?
Second, Myers.
Ms. Myers, thank you very much. Any discussion or comments?
Very significant and important and difficult topic. One of the things that we have been doing, and I note that especially the previous policy was substantially rewritten from the PSBA model policy. That's because our staff is using the opportunity of doing these policies to really figure out what we do, what we're going to do. So these are not rubber stamping these policies. We don't make a lot of change to them as board members because, in fact, they're largely determined by state law and then by best practices. But I can't overstate how important it is to our being prepared and professional and able to manage the unthinkable things that unfortunately educators have to handle, for our very talented staff to be going through these, figuring them out, getting them to us, rewriting them as they need to be, sending them, considering them. This is very much a thoughtful process for ensuring that we are prepared for, and thinking about things that might happen even when we don't want to. And I think that's a very good use of the policy practice. So thanks to all who participate from all sides, but especially our administrators.
I'll second that. Any further comments or discussion? On policy 218.3, discipline of students convicted or adjudicated of sexual assault, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. The last policy up tonight is policy 340, responsibility for student welfare. Ms. Marcel.
Yes, and once again, this is a revision of a current policy to update it to the templates and the verbiage from PSBA guidelines.
Thank you. The recommended action is that the board approve the above section of board policy and adopt it as policy, rescinding and declaring void all previous policies or portions thereof to the extent that they are inconsistent with this policy. May I have the motion?
So moved, Kramer?
Mr. Kramer, thank you very much. Ms.
Second, Myers.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Any comments or discussion?
I would mention, so again, these are options that we need to take, and the basic requirement is a legal requirement. This does answer the question, and I think it comes up sometimes, which is, should an educator from our district transport a child in a car? And that's a place where you say, here's a place where we can say, nope, that is not to be done. We took the option of saying no, and that is a very important topic for a variety of reasons. Policy matters, right? And this is a place where if there's ever a question, and you do hear these questions, if you work for nonprofits that work with children, whatever, you come back to this issue sometimes, and absolutely, there are teachers who come back to this issue. There's a clear answer, it's the right answer, and again, a very small moment in a lot of policies, and I'm pleased that we are passing so many policies to get ourselves up to date. You can tell, this one matters, it's very clear, there's no ambiguity about it, and I'm glad for that.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Mr. Finnegan.
It is very clear. I guess my question is, how are the items in this policy communicated to and agreed on by the employees so that they don't wind up in any situation where they're asking for forgiveness in lieu of permission? Do they sign off on them? Do they agree to them? Do we assume they're reading the policy? How is this communicated to them?
So at this time, as we update and renew new policies, the first place we take them to is our administrative council. So they will be shared with the administrative council, and then it will go out. Sometimes Dr. Rizzo-Saunders puts these things in her memos out to all staff. And we are currently looking at actually developing with Lisa and our communications a section of the website that may have a sign-in area just for staff, and they will be able to see anything that would be published as a new policy in that area.
Any other questions or comments? On policy 340, responsibility for student welfare, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you, Ms. Marsala. Dr. Barber, I see you making your way to the podium. Memorandum of Understanding with Octorara School District.
Good evening, President Cronenberg, Dr. Rizzo-Saunders. Thank you. This evening for your review and approval is an agreement, an MOU between the Octorara School District, thank you, Mr. McGuire, and the Kennet Consolidated School District. We have been partnered together. Octorara offers a Homeland Security, law enforcement, emergency medical services, and firefighting program related protective services. And it is an opportunity for our students who have that vocation to explore this program in the Octorara School District as well.
Thank you, Dr. Barber. The recommended motion is that the board approve the memorandum of understanding between the Octorara Area School District and KCSD regarding the Octorara Homeland Security and Protective Services Academy. May I please have the motion?
Move to approve, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, a second?
Second, Finnegan.
Mr. Finnegan. Any discussion or comments?
Some years ago, didn't we have an agreement with someone where we were going for fire training or emergency training for some of our students?
I believe this is the Octorara program is the one that we've partnered with. I'm not familiar with something maybe prior to my arrival, but this has been the program for firefighting.
And I can speak to that. So this is when this program came into effect, which is several years ago. This was a very, the firefighting community really strongly supports this program and is emphatic about how valuable it is and the opportunities that it presents. I personally am very pleased that we continue to be part of this and hope that as we move forward, especially with Kennet Futures, there's a lot that is possible in this particular relationship. And that has been discussed. There are good contacts between the Longwood Fire Company and the leadership of the regional fire entities and this program. It's very collaborative. This is a very good thing for us to support. My question was about transportation. Have we had many students attend this, and how has transportation been handled?
I do not believe we had large numbers of students that have handled this, but it's similar to what we do with our vocational program. Students either drive or we would be in a position to transport students if that was the case. Mr. Tracy may have more details on if we bust anybody or they're just driving themselves.
We do bus, I would say between 4 and 6 students annually to Modena. It's right outside of Coatesville. And sometimes we can coordinate that with our run down to the Chester County Vocational School Brandywine campus.
And my reason to bring that up, I didn't know that, but my reason to bring that up is that sometimes is a question. This is a place where we need to continue to support this. A small number of students have a disproportionate effect, especially when it comes to first responders and training people in our community. This saves lives. Even those students who don't go on are trained in a number of things, as many people know, and I won't get too far afield, but there's an app where if there is a cardiac arrest anywhere in our region, people who know how to do CPR are alerted. People who come out of this program are in a position to support, and this is a place where we build communities and we build safe communities. So I firmly believe no matter the number, and that's why I brought it up, I don't care if it's 5 students, those 5 students could save a lot of lives. So let's make sure that we continue to support this. Thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Finnegan?
I'm sorry, is this a full day or half day like the CCIU, or?
It is similar to VOTEC, I believe, right behind you on the board. It identifies that English, Science, Social Studies, and Mathematics students will be enrolled in Kennett High School.
Here, so it's the same, and then we have a same tuition rate that we pay to?
I think it's $10,700. I think that's also in the agreement.
It's the same, yes. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. All on the motion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Thank you, Dr. Barber.
Thank you.
The next agenda item is a report on the KCSD Special Education and Pupil Services staffing. Ms. Jones, please introduce.
Good evening, Dr. Rizzo Saunders, President Cronenberg, Board of School Directors, community members, and colleagues. At the request of our superintendent, Dr. Rizzo Saunders, the Chester County Intermediate Unit recently conducted a staffing audit specifically to take a critical look at the administrative and clerical structure within the Pupil Services Department. Audits such as this are within the scope of the services offered by the Chester County Intermediate Unit, and this audit in particular was completed at no cost to the district. Sam Ewing, Director of Student Services, is here to provide a brief overview of the final report, which was included as an attachment on tonight's agenda. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ewing.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thanks for having me out here. Thanks for the warm welcome. I appreciate that. I gave you in the burgundy folder a couple of handouts. So one's an executive summary in written form, and the other is an infographic. It just kind of helps simplify a lot of the information in the report. It was a 20-page report. Hopefully it was understandable enough in its original form, but I think that information is just helpful and kind of getting a quick glance at it. So I'll give you a kind of a high-level overview of the project. And just by way of background, we've done about 30-plus audits at this point across the state of Pennsylvania. We've done a few in New Jersey. We actually had it out of the country request for, I think it was Nicaragua, or it was a very unusual request to do a private school. They turned us down. So that was the one that turned us down. So this is a business line that's growing. A lot of districts are really looking for an outside objective look at their services overall. And staffing is always one of those areas that draws a lot of attention. So the way we structure these is, and similar to the communications audit that sounds like is underway with CCIU, is one of the things we do is get information from focus groups. So we talk directly with the folks involved. So here we were able to meet with your administrative staff as well as your support staff, your secretarial and clerical staff. We provide a lot of data to kind of verify or refute some of the anecdotal information to really help kind of draw upon what we're recommending and why. So one of the first things we did, as you saw on page 3 of the report, is we looked at your caseloads. So there's a lot of publicly available information. So the data we used for this chart was really, it's based on your Penn data, so your 12-1 snapshot of your special education enrollment. And then we look at the number of administrators. We have that information because we work closely, obviously, with the districts to come up with a ratio. So one of the things I didn't include in the report, and you can always, no matter how many times you proof something, you can always find something you missed. Your enrollment overall in the district in special education has grown pretty considerably. So one of the things that I should have done with this chart is really look at your current enrollment. So you're currently at 700, or excuse me, at the time of this report, you were at 708 students, which is up considerably from the number that was used, which was 613 here. So really, your ratio is 1 supervisor for every 236 students, which puts you higher up on the ratios. So should have spelled that out a little bit more clearly. Another thing that's critical to look at is just overall demographics for the district. So the way your department is structured, it's different in certain districts. Some combine pupil services and special ed, and some separate them out. So your departments are combined here. And when you take that in consideration of the district demographics, which I'll share some of the information just briefly with you in a little bit, in a few minutes, but you have a pretty high degree of need for your student population. So, and I think you guys know that, obviously. So one area in terms of your demographics is the complexity of your student needs. So I already talked about the increase in your special education enrollment. So you've risen from 533 students in 2019 to 708 plus, wherever your enrollment is going to go for the rest of this year. So that's a pretty big shift. Not unique to Kennett. We're seeing it across the county and across the state, quite honestly. It's just a rise in the severity of children with complex needs and like high degree disabilities. And we see that kind of bearing out. I know Dr. Garrett, as part of our CCIU board, has heard me present a number of times on the changing enrollment and demographics within our preschool program. But historically, you guys have had about 40, high 30s, mid to low 40s students transfer every year from preschool special education. This year you had 59. Next year you're looking at 58. And one of the things that we've done with working with Mrs. Jones and the superintendents is try to get, because we've seen this shift in our preschool enrollment, try to get you better data. So we created a dashboard for the districts to help project this. But we know the kids that are coming with a high degree of need from preschool. Another important factor, which I tried to spell out in the report, is with all of this, really, since I hate to continue to bring up COVID because I feel like we've got to move on, but we have seen a change in the staff and the experience and the longevity of our staff. So we know that our teachers have a higher degree of need for support, and that puts a burden on our special education administrators and team to support the staff. So some of the demographics that I talked about, the migrant enrollment in your community has grown from 138 to 213. Your homeless student enrollment has grown from 195 to 245. Low-income students now represent 1,851 students for the 23-24 school year. And your English language learners have grown from 573 to 647. So all those things have an impact on the district and how you operate. Chester County, as well as southeastern Pennsylvania, is one of the most litigious areas when it comes to special education. So special education, Section 504, they are entitlement acts. So districts are not suggested to provide these services, they're required to provide these services. And if they don't provide the services to a degree that is acceptable, parents and community parents have the ability to pursue administrative remedies, and that can be things like cash settlements, tuition settlements, and that's an area that Kennett has not been immune to either. So there is a high degree of litigation across Chester County, and for those reasons, you need to have administrative staff who can oversee and design programs that serve students with complex needs. And again, that's taking into consideration the demographics as well as, you know, your staffing challenges, like all other districts experience as well. So our recommendation, based on the information that we were able to gather from the report, was to consider adding an administrative position. We also suggested adding additional clerical support and adding teachers on assignment. And really, one of the things that came out in our discussions with your administrative staff is they are really burdened pretty heavily with a lot of the lower level tasks of proofing documents, uploading documents into systems, so things that are just not a great use of their time because the volume of the work is so high. So with that, we think if those additional supports are added, you would see improved retention across the district, strength in compliance, and reduced legal risk, enhanced supports for the children with disabilities in your district. So those are the general findings of the report. I know it was a lot of information really fast, but I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Ewing, thank you. I do want to mention that the reports to which you're referring to in discussing are attached to the agenda item in board docs. And they're very detailed and provide a lot of information for those who would wish to go in and review those. With that being said, are there any questions for Mr. Ewing or Mr. Jones at this point?
As far as you know, is this the first time we've had such an audit done here at Kennett?
Yes, to my knowledge, it is.
Okay, because it'd be interesting to see. I know with the the great job that Mrs. Jones is doing, that we're so much better than we were, but it's chasing a moving line right now. Obviously, with the demographics change and the high percentage coming in from the preschools in our district. So it's I know we're a lot better off than we were, but it's just we're just chasing this thing. So it would have been interesting to get a comparison of how, because I know she came in and dotted the I's and crossed the T's and found the skeleton in the closet and all those good things. But I was just curious if we had something to compare against.
We don't, unfortunately, yeah.
A quick question. So included in this is some assessment of the needs with English language. And I wonder, that was sort of a, can you just describe that process? Because that seems like a less intensive process with.
Sure. Actually, I spent a good amount of time with the supervisor for the ELD program. I think one of the things that was a benefit to that program is just the longevity of her stay within the district, which I know special education across the board and certainly in your district has had more transitions. So I think there's something to be said about that. The other thing is the ELD services, you guys had there's always, I guess, an opportunity for growth, but really you guys have a lot of really strong practices in your ELD program. I know the ratios is one area where she and I looked to some of your neighboring districts to wanting to try to get those numbers down a little bit, but overall the program, despite the changing demographics, is functioning well relative to some of the other needs in the district.
So, and I do have some thoughts. So Ms. Myers, who spoke my mind on this topic, as we were approving these buildings, right, noting that this has been a major focus, these two elementary buildings, which really put us in a very, very sound position. Ms. Myers made it very clear that the next big task here is to ensure that we support special education, especially. And I think this report is very much a moment in time that we all need to recognize as stating the truth about where we have been. What's nice about it is very hopeful. So in terms of both the anecdotes and personal experiences, I know that we are in a very different spot. We have not turned the corner, but we are somewhere on the curve. And that is hats off to all those people sitting against the wall back there and to Ms. Jones and to really a concerted effort to do this. Your report, which I agree with a number of the recommendations, I will mention very briefly. I don't want to hold us to a teacher on assignment model. I think that comes back to the administrators and to Dr. Rizzo-Saunders in particular to pick a model. Teachers on assignment is a very effective model. I think sometimes I've also seen it go astray, and so I would not want to come out and say, yeah, you better do that teachers on assignment because it is a recommendation. I do think it's a good one, but I'm not going to endorse that one. As for endorsing the idea that we need to strengthen and respond to exactly the really significant amount of data, the significant observations about, for example, what it's like to go through a series of this report, right? This is not just cut and dried stuff. This mentions the emotional toll of having to do a lot of settlements. And we need to take all of the words that are in this report to heart because it directs us very clearly into what, as Ms. Myers says, this is our next big focus. For me, and I want to be as passionate as I can be, this is the heart and soul of who we are. And the thing that is most important in my pretty extensive understanding of where we are is that we have understood as a district that this special ed stuff, that the idea that more people are human, which is ultimately what ADA said. It was a bipartisan, a full country in agreement that said people have been denied their humanity and by law they get it back. And that's what this is about. And for that reason, this makes us the community that we are supposed to be. And it insists that we approach each person as a person and that every person has an interior life that we can connect to. That applies to everyone. And when we push on an MTSS model, for example, which to me is one of the most important initiatives, that's taking that understanding and saying, yes, this is to apply to unidentified kids as well. This is who we need to be. So for me, getting this in writing, and to be honest, it really is an exemplary report because it puts in a whole lot of the content. There's a whole lot of stuff in here that is worth paying attention to. Don't read this once. If you read it many times because it has in it the kernel of why you can be really hopeful and proud to be part of this particular school district is that we are moving forward in making more humane, in understanding the interrelationships between country of origin, language at home, special education, regular education. This is really the kernel of what's going to push us into the next part of what I believe to be a really bright future. And I'm extremely hopeful. I appreciate this. It lays out a lot of work, but it also says we got to do it and we have to back this. And as a board, we have to speak on behalf of our community to say, yes, we believe this. For my part, yes, I do. Yes, I believe it is time to invest in this because we want to be the humane, thoughtful, the school district that says every individual is able to learn, but able to learn in a different way from every other individual. And we are going to do what it takes to back those people, those very brilliant people, all of you out there who know what you're doing. We're going to back you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Ms. Myers.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn my mic on. My question is, as we're seeing this increase and we also see the complex demographics, is this suggestion just for short term? Is there also a longer term plan that we would need to implement if we're seeing this increase that we saw over this year? So if we look at the chart, I'm not big on comparing ourselves to other districts because I feel like we have to be ourselves. But in looking at this chart, when you take our 3 and then with the increase and add it to potentially 4, we're still right in the same spot. If you think about these other districts, if these numbers hold true for them as well. And so does that make any positive movement if we're kind of right where we need to be, again, with the complexity piece of this?
You had your hand up.
Sure. So this actually goes also to what Mr. Finnegan was saying earlier, and that is about, it feels like we're chasing, which I've been here since August, but has felt that way to me as well. And I think where we need to get to is to a place where we are proactively planning programming. And that is the part that's the long-term part. The immediate part is to make sure we have an umbrella that clearly understands and is able to address the needs that we have in compliance and in planning programming so that we can then take the next step, which is to plan that program and put it into place. So I don't necessarily see this as a one-stop shop. It's definitely something that we're going to have to put into place and then allow those people to do their work and come back to us with, okay, here's the programming that we need to actively begin to build.
That makes complete sense, and I would love for that piece of things to have a timeline. So whatever it may be, whatever we're suggesting. So if these recommendations do go into play, and how much time are you going to need to kind of evaluate that to then say, yes, this is working, or no, we need to make adjustments. Because I don't want to say, oh, we did this in, March of 2025, and then we're in 2028, and we have the same model and nothing has changed. So if we can get a timeline around evaluating if this does go into effect, how effective it is, what adjustments need to be made as we're moving forward as well.
Okay, so I can't give you a hard and fast timeline right now. What I can tell you is that timeline is dependent on keeping everybody in place. So and I talked about this in the entry plan, the higher the turnover rate, the more problematic it is to keep everybody moving in the same direction. So the goal would be to have at least 1 year where all of our people were the same people so that they could take a clear look at what's happening. And we weren't trying to train a number of people to do their work, if that makes sense.
And I think it absolutely makes sense. And I think if we are experiencing the same issues, then that needs to be built into the model, right? Like, if we are not solving that piece of things, that is just who we are at this point, right? And so, yes, after a year, but a year makes complete sense. But after that year, if we're still experiencing that turnover that's then not allowing us to meet our goals, if it's still a trickle effect, we need to build that into the model and contingency around that.
And I would add a very specific example.
Oh, go ahead.
I just think this is a very important thing for us to get right. The students with IEPs, I see that we have a number of 613. Now, that's a full range. Does that also include the ATP students within that number? So that would be academically talented versus students with special needs. And I'm just curious, like, what that structure looks like for, the teachers in the room, the people who are doing the work every day. Of those 613, I want to know, like, what does that structure look like? And I know that's probably not something we can answer.
We're not going to be able to do that in the time that we have here tonight. I do want to point out it's 708, and no, it doesn't include our gifted children.
Okay, so that's another layer on top of this, which would bring our numbers up for oversight. So that would be 708.
Doesn't include 504 either, section.
And 504, yeah, so that is.
And that is, and I know Mr. Ewing just already pointed this out, but there are districts who have begun to separate their pupil services and special ed departments for the reasons that because this does not include 504. It does not include gifted students. It does not include EDL students. So we have a whole group of students that may fall under pupil services that don't fall under special ed, but still have to be discussed and programmed for under the pupil services umbrella. So, but at the end of the day, if we separate out the department, which is a very different model, then you're still going to have to add an administrator. So,
yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to mention, so as members of the oversight, at the high level here, one of the things that we should be focused on, the least efficient way, the way that you continue to chase the problem, is to not do what you need to do on time and then follow it up with a bunch of settlements. That is the least efficient use of our money in a certain sense. Money that is being paid to attorneys' fees is not going to our students. So I would argue that we've made some good strides in my experience with identifying students sooner rather than later, and that's a very important part of this, the hopeful part that we as the leadership, as the community leadership of the district can see is if we invest in ensuring that our administrators have the time to make those initiatives happen, instead of chasing individual students around, instead of, dotting the I's on IEPs, that kind of thing. If we can ensure that we have sufficient support, there are lots of reasons why this becomes a more efficient and more effective system. And the main reason I wanted to speak up is in one of the meetings that I went to, a strategic planning meeting, an educator at our high school said, this is not just, it was on the list as a challenge, right? That as a weakness or a challenge that we have so many students identified. And she said, that's a strength, because we are identifying a sufficient number of students earlier, and when we identify them, we can get them what they need, and the success rate is going to be good. This is really, there are challenges to this, but this is a very hopeful document, which is why I wanted to jump in again to make sure that it's clear. Ms. Myers is exactly right. How do we ensure that these are moving forward on a timeline, regardless of whether there are people who are, continuously or not? The point is, this is a document that directs us in a way where we will become more efficient with our funding. We will become more efficient and effective as an institution, and it's very important that we see the benefit here. It's very easy to say, oh my gosh, we've got to hire this person and that person. The big money pictures, we can use our resources efficiently or not, and we as a board need to understand we need to push hard to use the money as efficiently as possible, which means supporting those educators who are doing it. And I will point out the educators that I'm pointing to, who are administrators, are supporting the real people doing the real work, and they'll all agree to that, those teachers in those classrooms. As you point out, that's where the rubber hits the road, and my hat is genuinely off to all of those people. That's where we really need to invest.
If I could make just one quick comment, because I think you guys are bringing up some great points. When I was 18 years ago, I was hired by Downingtown to be the third special ed administrator. You can see now they have 9. And that doesn't represent things just kind of snowballing and going out of control. It represents the district really making strategic moves to control costs and program for much more complex students in their home district. And there's a lot of reason to invest in special education from a financial standpoint, because if you target those supports correctly, you're going to provide better services to your students and families, you're going to have less litigation, and you are going to be able to control cost to some degree too, because your budgets are a pie. They're not unending streams of funding. IDA is written to be without concern for funds, but there's a reality here. So I think it is a good investment. I think you make some great points about set some targets. What are your targets? What do you want to achieve? And what do you expect to get out of these positions? And I think you'll find that the investment is well worth the money when you look at it even from a financial analysis.
So I just always think it's important to be transparent, and I do not want to, I want to make sure that none of this comes off as disingenuous, because eventually what this will lead to, and LaToya, you started to talk about it, is either a change and or additions to what I would refer to as boots on the ground. We have to be able to see from 100,000 feet what's really happening in order to say, okay, now these are the shifts that we need to make in program, in push-in in classrooms, in pull-out in classrooms, in our tier 1 instruction, in our supplemental programming. What does MTSS look like, and what changes will we have to make in order to make that happen? So I just want to make sure that everyone here understands that just if we just take Mr. Ewing's suggestions, that's not going to just overnight solve the problem, that this is a multi-layered onion that we have to peel back until we figure out exactly what works for our students in Kennett.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? Anybody that hasn't spoken? This report, thank you, Mr. Ewing, is in the form of a presentation. No action is required from the board tonight. At the same time, I think you can hear from the comments that have been made and from the passion that has been exhibited that the board recognizes the scale of the problem that the district faces and that the board wants to take action. Dr. Rizzo Saunders just mentioned an onion that we have to peel to understand what's inside the onion. I will suggest that perhaps 5 or 8 or 10 years ago, the onion was not quite so big as it is now. And there's a lot more going on with that onion than is, a lot more going on with that onion now than there used to be. And we don't normally get into what I would call jargon in this meeting too much, but we've talked about specifics around special education and pupil services in things such as 504s and IEPs and that sort of thing. Please take a look at the attachments that are attached to the agenda item if you have questions or concerns. What I want to emphasize is that this is a formidable problem for the Kennett Consolidated School District and for every district. But this is a formidable problem for us that we're going to have to, as has been stated, it's going to require years to fully solve it. But we are recognizing the pieces, at least, of the problem, and we will take steps to solve it, partially because we are required by law to provide services to our students, but more so because of what Mr. Kramer said, because it's who we are and what we aspire to be, and we are aspirational in this respect. I would ask Dr. Rizzo Saunders or Ms. Jones or even Mr. Ewing, even though you're mostly on the way out, if there's anything further to comment about before we move along. Thank you again for this report. This provides us a great starting point with which to move forward. Thank you. Next up is an agreement with FIC Educational Services. Mrs. Jones.
Right. Administration is requesting that the board approve the renewal agreement with FIC Educational Services. FIC Educational Services provides a range of services to the district, including supplemental tutoring, social skills training, et cetera, for students due to varying unique circumstances.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. And I am trying to get my computer to update. Here we go. The recommended action is that the board approve the renewal agreement with FIC Educational Services. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. A second?
Second, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Mrs. Jones, a student agreement.
Administration is requesting that the board approve 2 confidential settlement agreements with the parents of students. Due to the confidential nature of these agreements, I am unable to answer questions or discuss the contents in a public meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Jones. The recommended motion is that the board approve 2 confidential settlement agreements with the parents of students. May I please have the motion?
So moved. Finnegan.
Mr. Kramer, or Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Second?
Second, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. We may not discuss. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. We move to new business item 5.9, the appointment of the solicitor. Fox Rothschild LLP has been the district solicitor for a short number of years now. It is time to reappoint a district solicitor. The district wishes to reappoint Fox Rothschild as solicitor. The recommended action is that the board appoint Fox Rothschild LLP as solicitor for the Kennett Consolidated School District for the period of July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028. May I please have the motion?
So moved.
Mr. Finnegan, thank you. Second?
Second.
Ms. Golden-Miarki, thank you. I would note that in the public content area of this agenda item are the details of this appointment. Any discussion or questions?
It's been working out very well with Fox Rothschild. I mean, having a firm work with, I mean, mostly work with Jeffrey, but I mean, he can reach out to his colleagues within the firm as opposed to our decades of a sole proprietor. So working with the firm has really helped us in our growing needs of legal advisement.
Thank you, Mr. Finnegan. Any other questions, comments? On the appointment of a solicitor, Fox Rothschild, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried. Item 5.10, the Borough of Kennett Square Parking Lot Agreement Addendum. Mr. Tracy.
Thank you, President Cronenberg. We have a rather small addendum to the original 1999 agreement for the South Street parking lot, which is owned by the Borough of Kennett Square, formerly known as the Junior Parking Lot. Anybody that's been past the high school, they're doing a significant amount of road work. I believe they're putting in a sewer pump station right beside that parking lot. We've been working with the Borough. They have given us an alternative parking location at 600 South Broad Street. There's 46 spots that we're losing. They have provided 46 spots in the Borough Hall parking lot for us. So this is an interim solution while the construction is ongoing. It will be ongoing through the remainder of this year and potentially to the beginning of next year, but it is already in place and working out relatively well.
Thank you, Mr. Tracy. The recommended motion is that the board approve the addendum with the Borough of Kennett Square. May I please have the motion?
So moved, Kramer.
Mr. Kramer, thank you. A second?
Second, Meyer.
Ms. Myers, thank you. Any discussion, questions? I will say that I have a couple students who are juniors. I just need to state that up front. So I'm perhaps not completely objective about this whole thing. But, you know, I wonder if, I don't know what other districts do. I don't know if there's a way to provide more parking, because I just got to say that the parking situation for juniors becomes worse and worse as the year goes by, because more kids get their licenses, obviously. So that's my editorial comment about this solution, but I'm fully in favor of this agreement. On the motion, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion is carried.
And it's not just your opinion, that came out in the student surveys as well, so.
That's fair. That's fair. We next move to public comment. We have two members of the public who wish to address the board tonight. The first is Ms. Zoe Rind. Is Ms. Rind here? Hello. Let me just state in advance that you have 5 minutes for your statement. We welcome you. We look forward to hearing from you and hearing what you have to say. I will say that it's the practice of the board not to answer questions or not to make comments, but we obviously are glad that you wish to make comments before us, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say. It's all yours.
Thank you for that introduction. This is my first school board meeting. My name is Zoe Wren. I moved to the Kennett area several years ago. I'm a former teacher and elementary school leader from New York City. So first of all, I'm just so impressed by what I experienced here tonight, and feeling really grateful. I don't have children, but feeling really grateful for the functionality of a local government in the midst of what's happening in our federal government that's dismantling systems. And here's one that seems to be functioning imperfectly, but very well with a lot of effort. So thank you to all the board members, as well as to all the educators who are sitting here late on a Monday night. My reason for coming tonight is that I'm here on behalf of the Dragonflies Indivisible group, and we're a group of concerned citizens in Chester County who are working on different issues in light of our current political situation. Particularly of concern to our group right now is we've been looking into the Safe Schools resolution. I'm heartened to hear that the immigration raids have not impacted the schools in Kennett yet, but the Safe Schools resolution is a resolution that states that every child deserves to learn in an atmosphere safe from fear. Right now, immigration enforcement is creating a climate of anxiety and instability. Parents are afraid to allow their children to come to school. Students are upset and unable to focus. The Safe Schools resolution offers a powerful solution to make schools a safe haven by prohibiting the collection of immigrant information and setting clear protocols for ICE requests, which I think there was some reference to tonight. tonight. This resolution protects children while upholding state and federal laws. This resolution is not about shielding those who have committed crimes. If ICE presents a signed judicial warrant, students will comply as required by the law, which I heard you reference tonight. This resolution is about due process and to ensure that there is no unnecessary stress and fear is placed on our families, especially the children. By passing the resolution, you'd be affirming that our schools stand with each student, no matter their background, and demonstrates that our district values safety, inclusion, and the right to education. We ask that you support the Safe Schools resolution and join the growing number of districts across the country and the county taking a stand for their students. Thank you for your time and your commitment to the community. And again, I'm really just so appreciative to live in Kennett tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight, and thank you for your comments. Next up is Mr. Rick Bochansky. Mr. Bochansky, we welcome you back. You heard the spiel about 5 minutes and all of that piece, and the podium is yours.
Okay. All right, good afternoon, or good evening. All right, so, I had bringing up over these past months, obviously, I think you guys are all tracking my concerns with the guidance that I was under the impression that you guys follow from the Pennsylvania Department of Education about the perverted, crazy things they say about sexuality. Now, the feedback I was getting, actually, Mike, you were saying that you guys are not affected by the executive order because you guys don't get into that stuff. Maybe you do, maybe I'm misunderstanding. But in a certain sense, I kind of feel like you guys don't get into these things when you should be. Like, so for example, I researched the library, what the kids can get exposed to in the library system. And I don't know what your definition of pornography is, but in my definition, there's pornographic material available. And also, again, the crazy transgender material that's just very harmful to kids is also available through the library system. That based on my research, the kids are exposed to that. So also the counselors, and again, the response, kind of vibe I'm getting is that, that this stuff is stuff that you guys aren't cog of. Okay, but it's still affecting the kids, and potentially the kids are getting exposed to harmful things. So from my perspective, there are things that, you're not doing anything about. Now, also, do you guys still have I looked on the website, looks like you guys still have the GSA, a student group. It talks about discussing gender and identity expression. I don't know if you guys have control over that, but whether you do or you don't, that's a concern as well, because the kids are getting exposed to things that even the federal government now has recognized as, harmful to kids, let alone the American Pediatrics College and a lot of other places. But again, we don't need that to realize, basic truth that God created men and women and, simple stuff here. So, just a reminder, too. Actually, there is one thing that I think that you guys do have technical cog of in the curriculum, because I actually talked years ago with some of the faculty about defining when human life begins. And, I think you guys got to review the health education grade, 9th grade curriculum, if at least you're going to be in accordance with federal, guidance, because per executive order 14168, female means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the large reproductive cell. Male means a person belonging at conception to the sex that produces the small reproductive cell. So they're identifying it as a person, and that's not identified in the curriculum, that's a person. And that's a problem, because in the curriculum, there's a link to Penn Medicine website that has a spot on it for abortion and explains how abortion is like an option, and just very misleading kids. So I get it, maybe there's some things that technically you don't have COG over, but either way, you're allowing exposure of these things to the kids, and it's hurting them. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Botansi. We appreciate you being here. We move to the calendar of events. A week from Wednesday, March 19th, don't send your kids to school, because they'll be turned away and sent back home. It's in Teacher In-Service Day. We appreciate teachers having a PD day, but no school on Wednesday, March 19th. Monday, March 31st, there's no school. District offices will be open. Monday, March 31st, there's a policy committee meeting at 6 p.m. and a curriculum committee meeting at 7 p.m. I'm going to back up just a hair. Thursday, March 27th, Friday, March 28th, and Saturday, March 29th, the Kennett High School musical, Little Shop of Horrors. I can tell you that's going to be fun. If you're interested and you want to see something fun, go see the musical. Monday, April 7th, the Communications Committee meeting and the Finance Committee meeting at 6 and 7 p.m. The next regular school board meeting is at 7 p.m. on Monday, April 14th. Anything else for the good and pleasure? The board meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.